Hey everybody, hope you guys are doing good today, and thanks for tuning in to watch the video, man. Much appreciated. And today I'm going to share with you guys a secret modification that I've been using for over 30 years. I don't think anyone probably sets this particular Dropshot rig up like I'm going to show you guys here. And actually, it was part of it, the bait anyway. The bait setup, which is an important part of this setup, was actually developed by one of my best friends of all time, Danny Correa. Danny and I traveled together for over 20 years before he quit fishing the circuit about, probably 12 years ago now. Got second place in the 1986 Bassmasters Classic Federation National Championship. Just one of my greatest all-time friends. And anyway, Danny won a Bassmaster Invitational on Lake Martin in Alabama back in the early 90s on the bait setup I'm going to show you. But I've sort of taken that rig and I've modified it to this springtime setup that I'm going to show you guys here. But anyway, before we get into it, just a few housekeeping tips here. Got quite a few things to go over. First of all, like I said, we're getting real close to hitting 25,000 subscribers on my channel. I can't believe it. Thank you very much for everybody that's subscribed. And when we hit 25,000, which should be in the next couple days, I'm going to be giving away a brand new pair of Solar Bat, Randy Blockett Signature sunglasses, a free supply of Bridgeford beef jerky. So all you have to do to be eligible for that is just subscribe to the channel. And also, I got a couple things up with Fish the Moment this week. This Tuesday, Johnny and I have our weekly podcast on Fish the Moment Live YouTube channel. That's the largest live podcast for fishing in the country. And also next Thursday on the 18th, we have our virtual seminar on spring jig fishing. It's going to be a great seminar. We're going to cover offshore jig fishing, shallow jig fishing, casting, flipping, finesse, everything. It's going to be a really good seminar, so you can check that out on fishthemoment.com. Okay, so let's get into this drop shot deal. The technique that I'm going to show you guys is specifically for spring fishing, shallow water, springtime fishing, drop shot rig. And a lot of people think when they think about drop shots and fishing drop shots, they think of it as basically a deeper water technique, a lot of vertical fishing, that type of stuff. And I'll do some other videos later on that. But specifically, it works really, really good in the springtime of the year when the fish get close to spawning. And one of the guys that really taught me about this technique to where I've sort of modified it to my own is Aaron Martins. I had a chance to fish with Aaron a couple times. He showed me this technique. I've taken it and modified it with my own approach to it and sort of came up with the system that I'm going to show you guys right here. So anyway, I'm going to show you guys how I rig this thing up from start to finish, and then I'll explain a little bit more about how we're going to fish it later on down the road here. Okay, so what we got here right off the bat, I'm going to show you the components for it first. Start out with a Gamakatsu G-Finesse drop shot hook. This is the #1 drop shot hook. And I'm going to get it tied on here first. And the way that you tie your drop shot on there is a big deal. What I use when I'm using a drop shot is I'm using a Palomar knot. You could probably use a double uni or whatever you'd like to use, but you got to have something that's got a fairly long tag end on it. So I'm going to start out with my Palomar knot. And I've got a little bit heavier line than normal on here, just so maybe you can see the line a little bit better on a hook. So that's the Palomar knot setup. Just like that. I've got my main line and I've got my tag end. The next thing you want to do on this, guys, is you want to take the line here, your tag end, your line, and come through the eye of the hook with it, from the bottom part of it. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow the hook to stand out at that angle when it's in the water. If you tie a straight Palomar knot, it's going to droop down to the side like that. But if you run that line, that tag in through the underneath side of the hook, it's going to get that hook to hang parallel as you're working that drop shot. Just gives a lot more natural presentation. So that's a big part of it, because drop shot's all about finesse, as far as how it looks there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our weight on. And this is another key part of the system. This is probably the second most important part of the system, is the Dropshot weight. I'm using a 1/16 of an ounce, and this is what's key for the springtime of the year. Most people, when they're using drop shots, you know, they're using 1/4 ounce, 3/8, you know, that type of stuff. Very seldom do people use the 1/16 of an ounce. But a 1/16 of an ounce is really critical to accomplish what I'm going to show you guys here in a little bit. And with my drop shot weights, what I do, you know, you've got your little opening there, you know, and I tie them on. A lot of people, when they put a drop shot weight down, they tie a knot on the end of the line. But what I like to do with mine is I just tie basically just a granny knot on it, a couple overhand knots, and that keeps the weight from ever coming off. That, clip my tag in. So I've got my setup here, got my hook, got my weight. Here's another key thing, the shallow water drop shot technique that I'm going to show you. You want to keep your leader fairly short. Most of the time I'm keeping it 6 to 8 inches long. You don't want it very far off the bottom because you're fishing shallow water. Okay, the next thing we do, we've got our Dropshot rig set up. We're going to go into the bait, and I'll show you this. And this is the big secret that Danny showed me over 30 years ago. He developed this because basically out of necessity. This is a 4-inch zoom finesse worm. And back, you got to remember, back in the early 90s, we didn't have all these finesse worm options we have now. Now you've got all these hand pours, you've got all these, you know, core pours, you got just a lot of different things. But back then, we just basically had these 4-inch finesse worms. And Danny, when he won that Lake Martin tournament, you know, he was catching spotted bass and the fish were really finicky. So he figured out, and this is the way I'm going to show you that works good on my system too, is take the 4-inch finesse worm, cut it off just right above the egg sac, like that. So now you've got a worm about 3.5 inches long or so, like that. And then what you want to do is, after you've cut it off square, you got to sort of make the head of it look like a natural head of a worm. So I take my scissors and I'm sort of cutting an angle, because I'm trying to bring that head to just a little bit of a point, almost like it was made for it, you know, something type of deal. I'll show you how to do that. And so see, I've sort of rounded it off a little bit like that. Okay, the next step is the rigging it. Here's another key part of the rigging here. This is a little tip I'm going to show you guys about how to use an exposed drop shot hook and make it weedless. What you want to do with this is you want to come in on the flat side of the worm, the flat side, come in about 1/8 of an inch or so in this part, and don't come all the way through. Come through this part and come straight through the point of it, like that. See, I've got my hook. That way, your hook, you've got the hooking capability of the drop shot hook, but it's completely weedless. You know, it's buried in that hook point right there, completely weedless. I can fish this around docks, I can fish it around stumps, I can fish it around isolated wood, whatever like that, and it's not going to come off there, and it's a lot more effective for hooking the fish than if you were Texas rigging it. And now, actually, on a bait this short, you couldn't Texas rig it anyway, unless you had just a tiny hook. So that's the way I got it set up here. So here's my complete setup right here, you know, rigged, ready for shallow water. And the final thing I do, and this is the tip that I figured out over using it for years, probably something very few of you guys do, is take blue dye, not chartreuse, not orange that 90% of the people use. Dip about 1/2 of an inch of the tail in blue dye, or you got it like that. And I'm telling you guys something right now, and this is a secret, this is a big tip that I'm giving up here. A green pumpkin straight-tailed worm with blue tail, with the blue dye on the tail, is absolutely killer in the springtime of the year. Anytime that water temperature is between upper 50s to mid 60s, right, you know, actually right before or right after or during the spawn, Green pumpkin with that blue tail will get a lot of bites, especially if you're fishing in water clarity that's over 3 feet. Most of the time I'm fishing this drop shot rig in that, you know, it'll work in dirtier than 3 feet, but I like that 3 to 5 foot range. So here's my final setup here. Got my cut down finesse worm, tail dyed blue. Of course I rough it up, you know, like I always do. I didn't show you guys that. And the 1/16 of an ounce sinker. And the reason you want the 1/16 of an ounce sinker on this setup is I'm casting this thing around shallow water. I'm fishing it around the places that the bass bed in, like behind docks, around, you know, any type of shallow cover, open banks and shallow water. I'm going down the bank and I'm casting this thing into that sort of that 2 to 5 foot zone. So you just don't want a heavy sinker, because one of the things you're going to find out, and I talked about this in one of my last videos as far as the flipping, when the bass are spawning and right around the spawn, they don't want a heavy weight. They like a slow falling bait. And this type of setup right here is a super subtle, super slow falling bait with a 1/16 ounce sinker. Most of the time I'm using it on 6 to 8 pound test line, no more than 8. I prefer 6 because of the feel on it, but a lot of it just depends on the cover you're fishing. If you're fishing around a lot of wood or, you know, snaggy stuff, I'll go to 8. But if I'm fishing it on like a lot of pea gravel or clay banks, I'll go with the 6. So guys, give this a try. I'm telling you right now, you're going to freak out on how many fish you catch on it. This spring, when that water temperature starts to get in the upper 50s, put this setup on, man. Just cut down that Zoom, you know, finesse worm or whatever finesse worm you like to use. Dye that tail blue and put that 1/16 of an ounce sinker on that drop shot rig. And I can promise you, you're going to get lots of bites on it. It's just, you know, deadly for all 3 species. I mean, I've caught lots of largemouth, I've caught spotted bass, I've caught smallmouth on it. I found that it works the best on lakes that have the combination of all 3 species, which a lot of lakes do around the country. So give it a try, man. Just get in there, get in the back of those coves on those spawning type banks, throw this setup and just see what happens. Let me know, man. So anyway, again, thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate all the support here, all the people that have subscribed. 60% of you guys out there that are watching these videos are not subscribing to the channel. Please hit that subscribe button, man. I'd appreciate it very much. So thanks again, and we'll be back soon with another video. Bye.